Many blessings, my loves. Blessed new moon to you all. And yeah, welcome, welcome. My name is Rebecca, and this is my new moon report for Pillars of the Moon. So, yeah, let's dive in together to this new lunar tide that we are now coming into right now, actually. Which is the 25th of June at 11:31 in the morning for us in the GMT time zone. So we are exactly at the new moon as I'm talking right now. So wow. And I didn't plan for it to be like that. This is just the only space I've had to do it. So how funny. So I'm going to share a screen with you all. We can look at the overview for the month. So you should be able to see now. This is the artwork that I've made for, just going to make it bigger, for this new moon in Gemini. So as you can see, the 25th is today, 11:31. And yes, we have our new moon in the stars of Gemini. So this is astronomical astrology. This is not the same as tropical Western astrology. This reflects the live visible sky. So yeah. Our first quarter moon will be in Virgo on the 2nd of July, and that will be at 20:30 GMT time. We've got a couple of retrogrades happening this cycle. So we'll have on the 4th of July, we'll have Neptune going retrograde. And then we'll have our full moon in Sagittarius on the 10th of July at 21:36. A few days after that, we have Saturn going retrograde on the 13th of July. And then our last quarter moon will be in Pisces on the 18th of July at 1:37. The same day, we've got Mercury going retrograde as well. And then a few days after that, we've got the Sun moving into Cancer. A couple of days after that, on the 22nd of July, we've got Eris going retrograde, dwarf planet Eris. So the last part of this cycle is pretty jam-packed with a few shifts and turns. And also the south node of the moon will be joining with Mars by the end of this cycle, which is going to bring quite a lot of pressure and volatility, I would say. But we'll look into the charts for all of that. So that's just the overview of the month, so you can see. I'm going to stop sharing that one now. And yeah, let's go into the live sky together. So this is coming up now, Stellarium Web. So yeah, anybody can use this program. I'm just going to add in the ecliptic line here. So you can see, I'm just going to change the time to exactly 11:31, which is just a few minutes ago. We have our new moon in the stars of Gemini. So you can see these are the Gemini twins here. And this is the sun and the moon. And a new moon, the sun and the moon are always together in the sky. So you can see very early Gemini here and conjoined with Jupiter. So really closely, the sun is joined with Jupiter at this new moon. And the moon as well is obviously very closely joined with Jupiter. So you can see that Mercury is on its way into the stars of Cancer now. So it's in very early Cancer, but very much on the cusp of Gemini and Cancer at the time of this new moon. So yes, we'll be talking a lot more about that. You can see as well that Venus is on her way coming into Taurus this cycle. So in a few days' time, she'll be crossing over into Taurus constellation. And during this cycle, she will be meeting with Uranus and the Pleiades. So Venus will be coming into her home stars when she moves into Taurus, which is, Venus will be very happy about that. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about Gemini, and Jupiter. So the full moon that's coming in 2 weeks will be in Sagittarius, which is ruled by Jupiter. So Jupiter has a really big part to play in this cycle. The new moon being with Jupiter, and then the full moon being in the stars of Jupiter in Sagittarius. So this whole cycle, I feel, is very much about teaching, learning, expanding our mind, expanding our consciousness, exploring new visions, new ideas, like educating ourselves. It could be a time of really like working with the Jupiter energy. Jupiter often is associated with growth and expansion and spirituality, generosity, open-heartedness, So all of these elements of Jupiter are going to serve us really well during this cycle. So this is a really great time to be, if there's something new that we want to learn, to be Gemini loves to learn, loves gathering information, loves kind of looking at different concepts and ideas, loves communicating. We could be seeing, in ourselves and those around us, there's lots of conversations happening around different ideas, different concepts. Jupiter likes to look at the philosophy and the deeper meaning and expand our awareness to, all things being connected. And yeah, it feels like with the new moon in Gemini, we will be drawn into new concepts, new ideas, and really it's about us expanding our mind, expanding our ideas, expanding those concepts, and kind of growing, into them. So this is an amazing time to be doing like, yeah, like meditation and be doing spiritual practices, but also researching and writing and yeah, kind of. I mean, I had this thing drop in the other day about the Fibonacci sequence and the numbers and the spiral and how it's connected to nature, and the Fibonacci spiral is in a lot of nature. You see it in many different things, and it just all came flooding into me like the other day, and I was like on this whole kind of thing like for ages looking at all the different numbers and how it's connected to this sequence. And this is what I mean by Jupiter is helping us expand, like the Gemini ability to like find ideas and concepts and like numbers, and then Jupiter being there is really opening up our awareness to the way that those numbers connect to everything, So this is the way that Gemini and Sagittarius, really need each other, because Gemini on its own might just look at the numbers and say, 1 + 1 is 2, but Jupiter sees the sequence and the connectivity into the cosmos. Jupiter can see the numbers that are connected to the spiral, which connects all of the flowers and the plants and us and also the galaxies. So this is how, this cycle, we could be really kind of drawn into, those ideas and that learning and that teaching that we're really interested in. This cycle is a really great opportunity to go for it, to expand our awareness in that subject, whatever it is for us, and, yeah, learn a new language or write a new book or connect more with others with our voice. This is a really great time to communicate within our communities. So the Gemini energy, it takes us, when we think about, what's below it, we've got Orion the hunter. This is right at Orion's hand at the Silver Gate. So this could be about searching for something, hunting for something, hunting something down. It's kind of like there might be this kind of curiosity to follow a certain path, to broaden our horizons. We may be inspired to even physically move into a new location, or to, yeah, a location within our mind, to explore a new concept that we haven't explored before. So Orion the hunter is actively, he's hunting for something that's going to feed him. So there's an element here of the explorative, curious kind of mutable sign. It's like there's a changing energy here. It's like saying, there's a way that we can change ourselves by exploring new concepts. Gemini is not fixed. It's always shifting and changing, and enjoys that kind of like the uh the fun and the joy and the kind of jovialness, I guess, that comes with Gemini. Can be very playful and curious to look at all these different ideas and concepts. My beautiful son is a Gemini and is constantly like trying to put things in different ways, and will not be kind of, trapped in one concept of how things are, but always see a different way or a different thing that might connect to a different thing. It's kind of that's very much the Gemini archetype. It's also the left brain and the right brain, the logic and the creative. So really kind of exploring, it could be a really great time to explore different parts of our brain, the left hemisphere, the right hemisphere, how that they need each other. If you're just in the creative and the dreamy and like the artistic, it doesn't, you need kind of both things, like in order to, for example, cook a meal. You need the logic of how to turn on the oven, or you might measure out the different ingredients, and then the creativity can come in and say, okay, well, let's add these different colors, let's add these different flavors. But there needs to be like also the ability for the logic to say, well, if you cook it for that long, it's going to burn. So there's like, this is all kind of stuff that, the Gemini energy really embodies this sense of, yeah, using our brain. And I feel like with Jupiter here, it's about kind of expanding out to more possibilities, to more blessings, to more abundance, to receive like the blessings of Jupiter this cycle. We really need to look outside of the fixed box that we've been in and open to new possibilities. And when we are in this state of openness to receive the blessings that are here, to explore new avenues, we expand our mind and expand our consciousness to become more of our full potential here as human beings. So yeah, that's that's my little download about Gemini and Jupiter. And yeah, so I think I'm going to go into the chart now. So you can see the new moon in Gemini is happening right now. And yeah, so we've got moon, sun, and Jupiter at 333. So, this is amazing master number. This is about abundance and good fortune. So shifting energy. This is about changing our ideas about things, looking out of the box, changing direction, and even changing the cycles of our thoughts for a more positive outlook. Jupiter likes to be optimistic and see the positive of things. So we may have been over that very intense solstice portal that happened over the weekend. As the moon was crossing over Eris and Chiron in Pisces here, so many of me and my friends, and we was at a festival, and there was so much coming up, for so many about this kind of the hidden and the stuff that really needed to come up to the surface to be looked at. So, and this can be like there's this old cycles that are coming to completion, now as the North Node is moving into Aquarius. This completion was coming from this Pisces kind of this Pisces trauma, or this Pisces wound, and parts of us that were hidden. And so Jupiter with this new moon is coming in with a sense of optimism, that we can expand and shift these cycles and these patterns of our mind, that we can awaken our consciousness, that we can be heart-centered and generous and giving. And I feel like during this cycle as well, there may be some of us who may be traveling different locations, moving about. There's going to be a lot of shifting and changing for us, and that might not necessarily be within the physical, but it's changing and shifting of the old patterns of the mind and the old cycles of the mind. So I'm just going to rub that bit out. So I wanted to look a little bit at the aspects as well. So just going to draw on this for you. So you can see that Jupiter is in this square to Saturn, who's closely conjoined with Neptune, and Ceres in Pisces. So it feels like this Jupiter square Saturn, it brings a lot of tension and feelings of restrictions for that optimism. It's kind of like Jupiter likes to be optimistic, like I said, and wants to learn new things, gather new ideas, kind of get out there, kind of expand. And then there's kind of like this energy from Saturn that's really kind of pulling us into what there's a lot of work that we need to do. So Saturn is the realist, kind of wants us to really look at, in a serious way, that kind of as well, like with Ceres being there, like the old kind of traumas and tragedies and, the cycles within the humanity, I think Jupiter in Gemini can be kind of very over optimistic, and not even blind to see the bigger cycles and seasons within humanity. And Jupiter in this square to Saturn, it could feel like a really challenging energy for us, like that we feel like there's a lot of ideas and wanting to expand and grow, and then Saturn is kind of like pulling us back to reality, or it's like bringing a box around that vision and that dream, and kind of like saying, but hold on, like we need to make sure that it's for the long-term good of everyone, and it's actually there's like a restriction or a challenge that's coming from Saturn to really kind of say to Jupiter, I know you've got lots of ideas and you want to learn and grow and expand, but also the cycles within Ceres, cycles within humanity, our seasons, our feelings, our trauma, the tragedy, is also needing to be kind of addressed. So these are where these energies are kind of clashing, I would say, to bring a challenge to say, like you want to get out there and explore, but what about all this work that needs to be done first? So quite a tricky energy that, this Jupiter in square to Saturn and Neptune, Ceres. That's just one thing, we've got a lot of other stuff going on as well. So you can see, I'm going to draw a big line across. So you've got Gemini, Mercury, who's on this cusp of Gemini and Cancer. Ooh, coming all the way over to Pluto, who's retrograde in early Capricorn. So this is really going to be bringing a lot of intensity around our communication. Intense conversations around work and home, around the balance that's needed between, our family and our home environment, and also, the energy of hard work that comes with Capricorn. So this is a really quite intense energy where we could be having lots of intense conversations around our feelings, around this kind of even mother or father kind of issues. If you're in a family unit, there could be, intensity within, what's being said between, the mother and the father within the home. It could be to do with work, it could be bringing up conflict, it could be bringing up drama, things that need solutions, and as I was saying, like this energy of Gemini maybe has a new idea, to let's try this new thing, because there's a lot of intensity around these two energies, so how can we try a new way? How can we create something different that will be supportive for the home and the work life? So yeah, that's also by the end of this cycle as well, the sun will be coming in opposition to Pluto, which is also going to be bringing a lot more intensity. But talking about Pluto, Pluto is making some interesting aspects this cycle. So at the time of the new moon, Pluto is in, well, there's two YODs in the chart, and the YOD is the finger of God, and it brings a really interesting aspect, and it's quite a lot of pressure and intensity to the point of the YOD. So you can see Pluto here, and Saturn and Neptune and Ceres here. So Pluto in Capricorn, and then this Pisces energy with Saturn, Neptune, Ceres are in a sextile aspect here. So, and that, if you come all the way across, you make a big pointed triangle to Mars, who is in Leo. So I'm just going to try and draw it on here. Ooh. So we can see that this yod is pointing towards Mars. So there's a lot of pressure on Mars in this beginning of this cycle that's coming from Pluto and Saturn and Neptune and Ceres. And I guess what the pressure is bringing is it's saying, we need to drive, we need to push, we need to force change, action. There's so much pressure on Mars to lead, to dominate, to force, and Pluto in Capricorn, it's like bringing up like the real kind of shadows and the darkness to do with institutions, structures, patriarchy. Like it's bringing up the dirt of like the systems that are in place, which Saturn, Neptune, Ceres, it's bringing tragedy and trauma. It's also the yod is pointing towards Mars. What are you going to do about it? There's a lot of pressure on that head of this yod. The finger of God is pointing towards Mars, and we know that during this cycle, Mars is going to be coming in conjunction with the south node of the moon in Leo. So this is a really, really tricky energy. So by the end of this cycle, by the last quarter moon, Mars will be conjunct the south node. This is going to bring a lot of volatility. It's going to bring a lot of eruptions. It's very kind of, Mars in Leo is very military. It's very dominating and kind of forceful, willful. It's my way. It's a really quite an intense place for Mars in the sky, and with this yod with Pluto as well. And it's pretty big. But there's another yod. There's another yod. Okay, so the other yod is with Mars again, but Mars is at the top of the yod in sextile to Jupiter and the moon and the sun. In this sextile, in this sextile here. And this is pointing down to Pluto. So Pluto is under a lot of pressure as well from Jupiter and Mars to make change to those structures, to demolish the structures of the old systems, So not only is Mars at the point of a yod under a lot of pressure, Pluto is also under a lot of pressure to, as well with Jupiter, to expand, to grow, and with Mars in Leo to dominate. So this is a very colliding kind of energy. It's a very military energy. It's a very destructive energy, and this is what's happening at the beginning of this cycle, so we really need to take care out there to look out for this kind of volatility and change, and know that within the chart, at the seeding of this new moon, there is a fuckload of pressure. on some really big players within the chart, with Mars being in Leo, Pluto being in Capricorn. So what can we do, individually, is, like I was saying at the beginning, explore new concepts, look at different ways of doing things, expand our mind, learn, like research, communicate, network. This Gemini is great at networking, using our social media platforms, like communicating the truth. And I feel like with the full moon coming up in Sagittarius, there's going to be a big quest for truth. And, I said as well about Orion being the hunter who is below, Gemini constellation. His hand is there. It's like he's reaching for truth. He's searching, he's hunting for the answer. So this cycle could bring, a kind of a quest for truth, or a quest for the answer. Why is this happening? What is the teaching of it? How are we growing as a humanity? Um, Yeah, so what else did I want to talk about with this, the new moon chart? So yes, you've got the new moon is in trine to Vesta, and this Vesta in Virgo. So, I mean, this is a really lovely energy. It's bringing a bit of loveliness because we need that. But Vesta in Virgo, it's like she's devoted to the land. She's devoted to her children. She's devoted to medicine and growing things and harvesting things. So what would be very supportive for the new moon in Jupiter is to, because Virgo is the harvest mother, and Jupiter, it brings abundance, so looking at ways that we can grow ourselves, but also grow food together, to grow herbs and plants, really connected to our devotion to the earth, our devotion to the land, and, really seeing how we can, yeah, bring in that harvest for all, and work together to grow and to be really in service and devotion to that, to like there's an abundance that comes, from being in service to the land, and yeah, communicating that to each other, communicating of the importance of returning to the earth, to really working with the earth and the seasons and cycles of nature. That is where the abundance is. So there could be lots of ideas as well coming in around ways that we can grow food and bring in abundance together collectively, with this North Node moving into Aquarius now. So it's very much on the cusp still, but over the course of this cycle, it's moving more into the Aquarius constellation, this North Node. So there's a new cycle beginning for us to be more in community, to be more collective in how we're doing things. And I just noticed as well as I was sharing that is in square to Pluto, Vesta in Virgo is in square to Pluto, who's in square to Eris and Chiron. So that's making a T square to Pluto. So it's great lessons coming around this, around the service of the mother and the devotion of Virgo, and this energy of collective healing and shadow and corruption and distortion, that it feels like there's a lot coming up to the surface at this time that's kind of like being called to our attention, that we need to bring a shift of our mind, that we need to look at things differently, that we need to come more into our humanity, into our collective consciousness. And Pluto here in this T square is really bringing up, the hidden parts of our psyche, the hidden parts of our collective, up into, be spoken about, this opposition to Mercury, to talk about our wounds, to talk about the shadows. And, this can also bring a lot of sadness as well, and a lot of sadness for the traumas of the world. All right, I'm going to remove all of that now. Um, yeah, and so you can see at the time of the um, new moon as well that Venus is coming really close into this cusp of Taurus and will be moving into Taurus during this cycle. So she's making a shift. So our creative energy, will be coming home. Our creativity will be becoming more grounded. We'll be looking at ways that we can love, more reliably, more consistently. There's going to be our creative energy and our all that we love is going to be becoming more grounded. So as Venus has come out of Pisces and her retrograde and all of this kind of deep, deep stuff that was moving through her, she's come through this birth portal of Aries and Cetus, and she's about to land. Venus is about to land in Taurus with Uranus and the Pleiades. So it's so fertile for her. Like the Venus energy has got a lot of fertility coming and a lot of growth coming, and really Uranus with the Pleiades is like a lightning bolt into the earth to really wake up the earth creatively into more love, into more connection, into valuing love, valuing our creativity and our connection, and Venus in Taurus is very sensual. She's very embodied. She's very in her heart, so Venus is on a beautiful journey, for the start of this cycle as she's preparing to come into Taurus. So I'm going to go over to the first quarter moon, which will be in Virgo on the 2nd. And you can see here, this is where the first quarter moon will be happening. So I really encourage everyone to get out into nature, to get their feet onto the earth, because the sun in Gemini with Jupiter can be feeling really quite mental, like a mental overload. We could be feeling quite even confused by all the information, So what Gemini needs, with this first quarter moon in Virgo is to ground, is to breathe and be with the earth, to be in the garden, get our hands in the soil, look at what's growing, look at what's not growing, harvest some medicine from the land. It's a really great time to be getting out there and seeing what's growing, and kind of making use of that which is there. I'm just looking to see if there's anything else I wanted to talk about with that. Yeah, so I'm not going to say too much about that. I want to go over to the full moon in Sagittarius. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to come and do a full moon video for you all for the full moon in Sagittarius. But you can see here that by the time of the full moon, Neptune has gone retrograde and Saturn is about to go retrograde as well, just after the full moon. You can see that at the full moon, Venus is with Uranus in Taurus. And you can see that Mercury has moved into Cancer officially. And the energy of this full moon, you can see that Mars is approaching the South Node here in Leo. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm going to do a whole other video on that. But like I just said at the beginning, the energy of Gemini and Sagittarius are the great teachers of the zodiac, the great learners, the great inspirers, the gatherer of wisdom and knowledge and cosmic order. So as we come to this full moon, which will be the fullness of the cycle, we're really going to be hopefully, finding some truths being exposed. And, that could be, to do with, with Mercury in Cancer, to do with our home, really looking at, the truths of our foundations, especially with Venus being at home in Taurus. We could be really needing to come home to ourselves, to our body, to our feelings, to what's important to us. And yeah, there could be, so this full moon as well is in trine to the South Node in Leo, so that's quite an intense energy, really kind of like looking at the source of our creative truths. Um, yeah, but like I say, I will come back and I'll do another report on that in a couple of weeks. But just jumping over to the last quarter moon, which will be on the 18th. And this is where things are really starting to kick off this cycle. So we've got 33 conjoined with Eris and Chiron. I mean, that's pretty intense in itself. And, this is where the moon was around the solstice. And so many people that I know had so much coming up around the solstice time. So, on the 18th of July, we've got the moon crossing over Eris and Chiron again. And at the same time, you've got Mars conjoined with the South Node in Leo. So I mean, and then you've got this T square happening with the last quarter moon, the Sun in opposition to Pluto. I mean, it's very intense. Let's just say that. So, yeah, I'll dive more into that when I come back for the full moon in Sagittarius in a couple of weeks. But yeah, the ending of this cycle is it holds with it the potential for a lot of collisions, a lot of eruptions, a lot of pressure, a lot of force. And I feel like with the moon conjoined with Eris, it's really kind of calling out the big fat elephant in the room, the parts of us that we really need to shift and change, in our life, the parts that we haven't wanted to look at, the parts that haven't been invited to the party will be kind of coming up to center stage, to the surface, to really be kind of addressed for ourselves individually as well as collectively. Yeah. The new moon after that will be in Cancer on the 24th of July. And what can I say about that? We've got free again. There's lots of these frees. It's a very shifting energy, So, and also Mercury's in Cancer as well. So I feel like the new moon that's coming after this new moon, because Mercury will be retrograde as well, lots of reviewing of our family, of our home life, of our security. So yeah, that's another report to come. And the South Mars would have crossed the South Node by then as well. But yeah, I'll leave it there for now, my friends. Blessed new moon. Really tuning into Jupiter, tuning into the gifts of Jupiter, and seeking answers, seeking wisdom, exploring what is true to me, where does truth come from, and there may be an opportunity for new learning, to do writing, to do traveling, and to really kind of explore, different ideas around reality. So yeah, Jupiter is ruler of this cycle, so really honoring Jupiter and really, yeah, meditating with Jupiter and allowing Jupiter to be our guide. New moon blessings, sending you all so much love. And yeah, I'll see you soon. Blessed be.